Lisa Siebelaughton. I work in community development for the city of Manassas, and I'm also the author of Manassas, A Postcard History. And you may have seen this around at the Manassas Museum. It's for sale at manassasechoes.com. And it's a really fascinating history, a look at historic postcards, mostly from the early 1900s. And most of the postcards came from the collection of the Manassas Museum. So I'm back here in the Manassas Museum Library, and I'll give you a little sneak peek of some of the research that I did and some of the fascinating postcards that we have in the collection. Now, back in the early 1900s, you may think it was only tourists that were using postcards. They might send one, say the Manassas Railroad Depot here, and that's true. There were people visiting. Often they were visiting friends or family here, and they might send a postcard saying, "Look where I'm visiting." Postcards were used for businesses. They would promote their business, like this gas station. They would promote the bank. Here, lots of the banks had their own postcards. But a lot of these postcards were also used by local people just as a very inexpensive and quick way to communicate. And there's the Dixie Theater that used to be in town, a very narrow theater that's now occupied by a bakery on Main Street. Folks would send lines to relatives far and near, and they'd say, "How's Uncle Harry doing?" Or, "We went out to dinner last night," or, "We had a church supper last night," or, "So-and-so is sick today. It rained for 3 days." And these were some of the messages that we often find on the backs of some of these postcards, and very simple messages that people were sending back and forth. If you're wondering when postcards originated, they were thought to have begun at the Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893. These were illustrations on government-printed postal cards and on privately printed souvenir cards. The government postal card had the imprinted 1-cent stamp, while the souvenir cards required a 2-cent stamp. Writing was not permitted on the address side of the card. If you see a postcard without a line down the middle on the address side, that means it was produced from 1901 to 1907. The use of the word postcard was granted by the government to private printers in 1901. In this era, private citizens would often take black and white photographs, sometimes of their home or businesses or schools, and have them printed on paper with postcard backs. Writing was still not permitted on the address side. In the early 1900s, you often saw real photograph postcards. These are the most valuable postcards. And lots of people produced them of their homes and businesses, and they're actual photographs that were mounted on the stiff cardboard of postcards. The divided back era began in 1907, and if you looked on the back of the postcard, you'd see a line down the middle. You could write the address of the person you were sending it to on the right side and write a message on the left side. The white border era in postcards began in 1915, and this was really a way for printers to save money. They used less ink, having that white border around the edge of the postcard. The linen era began in 1930, and that's when printers started using paper with a high rag content, which gave it a linen-y or textured finish. They also used a lot of very brightly colored dyes. The photochrome era, or chrome postcards, really began in 1939 when the Union Oil Company put these postcards in their western service stations. They became widely available in 1945, and those are the postcards that you see today on most racks everywhere you go. Thanks for joining us for another Behind the Scenes at the Manassas Museum.